right, we're starting to get to the fun stuff. So what images come to mind when you think of principles of design? Many of you have likely taken an art course and you've learned about elements and principles of design, whether they've advertised them as that. So many different fields use these ideas, such as architecture, interior design, urban design, landscape design. They're all guided by principles of design. Areas of the fashion industry, such as textile fabrication, marketing, and merchandising, also use elements and principles of design to guide designing decisions. So elements and principles of design are not just a designer's problem. Everyone involved in the fashion industry needs to understand these principles. So let's get started. What guides good design? We have the difference between an element of design and a principle of design. So in Activity 1, designers choose fabrics, notions, embellishments, and other construction techniques to transform their drawings and sketches into a three-dimensional reality. Thinking of a design is actually an orderly process, and if you're not professional, then maybe it's not orderly for you, but it's orderly for the designers. The designer's challenge is to use, manipulate, and interrelate the elements of design, which are here: the silhouette and shape, the space, the line, the texture, or the color of the garment. And they need to use these in new and exciting ways. Things that they need to consider are the principles of design, and usually this has to do with the harmony of the entire line. So these two things, elements and principles, are different. And if these two are married properly, then it will equal a good design. Let's look at silhouette. So on the right here we have some basic silhouette shapes, and the elements of design generally are the building blocks of design, and silhouette is one of the first places that we start. There are three basic silhouettes that, from a historical perspective, can be traced back thousands of years to the Middle East and the Far East, and even though they're from quote-unquote away, they're consistently represented in Western dress. So some of these things are the bell, or bouffant shape, which is right here, the tubular shape, which is right here, and the back fullness shape, which is right here. And these silhouettes resemble the architecture or buildings of the time, which you may not have known. The tubular silhouette right here was the predominant silhouette in the early to mid-40s, and then it came back again in the 60s. It's still very predominant today, and it's evolved into another silhouette, which is called the natural body silhouette. So think of the clothing worn by Victoria Beckham or Posh Spice. Beckham is all about the natural body silhouette. Tubular is a little bit more loose, whereas the natural body silhouette is tubular but form-fitting at the waist and the hips. So although there are very many different silhouette variations, there are several basic shapes that designers use. In women's wear, a designer may choose one or two of these silhouettes as a focus of their collection. Men's wear is totally different. One silhouette is usually chosen for a collection, and one garment is distinguished from another through the use of different fabrics, detailings, and trims. So women's wear has a lot more silhouettes to play with. Silhouette, one of the things that we need to consider is volume and qualities of lightness and weight. So if you want a sense of fullness, you might choose a bouffant style. So if you want someone to look more shapely, especially in the hips area, you would choose either an hourglass or a bouffant shape. If you wanted someone to look less curvy, then you may choose something more tubular, depending on what the garment looks like. When designing a collection, you have to consider the silhouette from a 360-degree perspective, and that's hard to do in a two-dimensional image. But sometimes the silhouette is different from the front than it is from the back. The silhouette unifies and helps develop the theme of the entire collection. And several designers, such as Seawright, notes that the inspiration of the silhouette should come from the different elements of your research. So perhaps you're looking at historical dress. So look at abstract shapes and then apply them to a figure, and that's the first stage of your basic design elements. Let's go to line, texture, and color. So once the silhouette's been chosen, the designer can further individualize the garment by manipulating the shape of the collar, maybe the sleeves, the pockets, or they could lengthen or shorten the hemline. Once these shapes have been determined, the designer can focus on the line of the garment, as well as details, trimmings, and other considerations. The line refers to the cut and the placement of structural lines, such as seams. So if you look at what you're wearing right now, you can see that there are structural seams and hems. What's essential to understand about line is that there are very interesting illusions that can be created. So you could use vertical lines to make a body seem longer, or horizontal lines to shorten the body. You can use curved lines to give a more curvaceous or feminine appearance to the garment. Designers really have to understand the power of the line in creating a visually pleasing design. Another thing to consider is texture. Designers will often use an identical silhouette and identical details for a number of pieces, and then just change the texture of the fabrication. So texture affects the appearance of the garment, but it also determines the type of fabric manipulation that can occur in the construction of the garment. So, for example, garments made from leather or heavy woolen fabrics can't incorporate gathers or draping in the design. It just doesn't work. Fabrication will not respond to this type of manipulation, and designers know that. And if they want something to drape or gather, they have to choose a fabrication and a texture that will translate that and enhance their design. Last is color. Color is the element of the design that has the greatest visual impact without increasing the cost. So garment provides symbolism, mood, emotion, excitement, cohesion. Color can often be the starting point of a collection. You might notice a color and then the design process goes around that. For some designers, it's the earliest decision they make when designing a collection. So it's essential for designers to have a solid understanding of color and color theory and how colors can be used and coordinated effectively. That's basically a rundown on the elements of design, and now we're going to shift to principles. Designers must execute the principles of design to create a successful product. And regardless of the type of fashion product being designed, the proper execution will be the success of the product. I'm going to just list them here, and then we'll talk about them in a little bit more detail later. But proportion helps visually aid the garment. Emphasis, so maybe the top of the garment is very textured and embellished, and the bottom is not. Balance, rhythm, unity, and harmony are all things that designers need to consider to design products that customers will buy. Other than elements and principles of design, there are some other factors that designers need to keep in mind. We talked about this in an earlier activity. Function is huge. So sportswear has a different function than evening wear. What is this garment intended to do? Fabric. The fabric ties to the function. Is the fabric resilient enough to do what it needs to do? In addition to function, it also could be the source of inspiration, so they might even choose the fabric before they draw the actual garment. Use of prints. Prints can be used on one area or the whole garment. Embellishments are different. Embellishments are things that we add, such as embroidery, smocking, or beading. Detail is different than use of prints and embellishments. Basically, it is a design feature that sometimes various designers use consistently. So maybe it's a certain type of neckline, or a certain type of pocket style, or a certain type of seam, a skinny belt, a fat belt, anything like that. The way that the garment is fastened is all a detail. And the last thing is the industry level. So couture and ready-to-wear levels are often known for their signature designs, and mass production is generally an interpretation of those popular things on the runway. Now we spoke about color, and in order to give us a good basis of color, I want you to do a little bit of an exploration. You're going to click on the following links, so the color show and color wheel, and then you're going to review these elements and principles of design. So you need to take probably about half an hour to 40 minutes at some point this week and go through these different exhibits to test your knowledge. And then once you have this done, and this is really important for your summative task, you'll be able to explore Activity 4, which is all about illustrating fashion. And our summative task for this unit will be doing our own fashion sketch. I'm really excited about this. So stay tuned and show me what you know from this page in your illustration.